bit, you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News and our top story. After making major changes today to his government in a cabinet reshuffle, the Prime Minister has given a speech at the annual Lord Mayor's Banquet in London. Being upstanding for the national anthem, Rishi Sunak vowed to stand up for tolerance and free speech as conflicts overseas created division at home, he said in a speech on foreign policy. He also praised the work of the former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly while expressing high expectations for the return of Lord David Cameron to Cabinet.
And so we've delivered one of the most significant years for British foreign policy in recent times. That's due in no small part to James Cleverly, and I know that he'll bring the same vigour to the equally vital job of Home Secretary. And I'm pleased to have appointed a new Foreign Secretary who will build on everything that we have achieved in the last year.
Well, earlier the Prime Minister said the Cabinet reshuffle had built a united team. Let's take you through what happened today. Well, later on in the evening, we saw GB News presenter and former Housing Minister Esther McVey entering Downing Street. She re-emerged later as Minister without portfolio. That's being suggested as a role involving the Minister of Common Sense informally. Meanwhile, Victoria Atkins is the new Health Secretary, replacing Steve Barclay, who takes Environment. Laura Trott steps in as Treasury Chief Secretary. Well, also in that government reshuffle, Richard Holden is the new chair of the Conservative Party. And the former Prime Minister, Lord David Cameron, was appointed Foreign Secretary 7 years after he left Number 10. He replaces James Cleverly, who takes up the role of Home Secretary. That's after Suella Braverman was sacked by the Prime Minister early this morning, ending days of speculation about her job security in government. Meanwhile, the new Foreign Secretary, Lord David Cameron, says he is delighted to be back in government.
I hope that 6 years as Prime Minister, 11 years leading the Conservative Party gives me some useful experience and contacts and relationships and knowledge that I can help the Prime Minister to make sure we build our alliances, we build partnerships with our friends, we deter our enemies and we keep our country strong. That's why I'm doing the job and I'm delighted to accept.
Lord David Cameron speaking there, but his return isn't without controversy. Some suggesting he won't be facing, for example, regular grillings from MPs. Lord Cameron's position in the House of Lords means he's exempt from regular sessions of Foreign Office questions, with junior ministers fielding questions for him instead. Number 10 says he won't draw an attendance salary for the House of Lords, though, whilst he is Foreign Secretary. And away from politics today, the funeral of Sir Bobby Charlton took place in Manchester today at the Cathedral. In attendance, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, as well as the former Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson. Friends and fans gathered in their thousands to bid Sir Bobby farewell, lining the streets near Old Trafford. The football great making 758 appearances for Manchester United and winning the European Cup in 1968, as well as the World Cup with England in 1966. The farewell to Sir Bobby Charlton today. Now, gusts of over 70 miles an hour have been recorded as Storm Debbie sweeps across the UK tonight. The storm has left thousands of homes without power and caused some disruption for rail passengers. If you're watching on television, these are the scenes along the Kent coast earlier on today. And a week's worth of rain is due to fall across parts of the UK tomorrow as wet weather continues to batter the country. A yellow warning is in place for thunderstorms from 5 a.m. tomorrow morning until midday. That covers London, the southeast and the southwest of England, whose turn it is to be battered by Storm Debbie. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I've gone fully autumnal, braced for the autumn weather that is going to be sweeping through the studio this evening, and I can already sense that I've overdone it. Joining me tonight for a fun frolic through Tuesday's newspapers, nice to see you, Bruce Devlin, podcast royalty Nick Dixon.
Thank you.
You've got a decent trail there.
Yeah, well, 1 million downloads on The Weekly Sceptic. Just interviewed Dave Rubin on my other podcast,
A million downloads. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And those are like human downloads, are they?
Humans, they're not AI. Those are real.
Astonishing. What have you been up to by comparison?
Oh, you know, crying.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, wishing I had 1 million downloads in any form.
I know, I don't understand how it works. No. But maybe we can tag on to Nick's coattails. Let's be nice to him, see if we can be swept up into his tier.
Be a nice change.
So let's take a gander at Tuesday's front pages. We have the Daily Mail, Rishi's big throw of the dice. Which is an interesting way to describe reappointing an ex-Prime Minister. Telegraph, Cameron's return sparks Brexiteer clash. There he is, that picture will appear. Guardian, Cameron's shock return in high-stakes reshuffle. The Times, Sunak brings Cameron back from the wilderness. iNews, Back to the Future. That's a fair way of putting it. PM gambles on the return of David Cameron. And finally, the Daily Star, rise of the slapheads. Well, those are your front pages. So, kicking off the in-depth look, what are we going to go with? The Times, I think, first of all.
Yeah, so the headline is Sunak brings Cameron back from the wilderness. A lot of people would say the dead, because he seemed to kind of pass on and go away for ages. There is a huge amount of controversy in this, with him being a member of the House of Lords, although he won't... Wow, I think that was David coming through the room. Psychic Sally's here.
It's in the room with us.
Exactly, but because he does have a peerage and because he is in the Lords, he's not going to be allowed to... he's not going to be able to draw his Lord's salary, his daily attendance salary.
OK.
So I presume he won't be too upset about that because he'll be getting salaried for this job.
Yeah.
But I think because of his association with the Lords, he doesn't actually have to go and be questioned within the House of Commons.
No, that's right.
Correct?
I mean, there are committee stages, I think there are, arrangements outside of the main chamber where he can be questioned and quizzed, and he can be obviously attacked for his policies within the House of Lords. Labour and so on have representatives in there, but it's not entirely without precedent. I remember it. Nick, do you remember it? Lord Carrington, who was Foreign Secretary when the Falklands was invaded in 1982. He was in the House of Lords. And he resigned as Foreign Secretary at that point. It was the last honourable resignation.
I'm too young, but I believe you. Yeah, and people have come back. Was it 70?
50 years ago.
Yeah, OK. Yeah, so, and I'm less concerned about the Lords part. I mean, I'm more concerned that they're just out of ideas, out of touch with the people, out of touch with the members, you know, because there has been a tectonic shift since Cameron was in, you know, with Brexit. And he, of course, he's not just a Remainer, he's the kind of Remainer. He's the Remainer because he made the referendum happen. So, yeah, I think it's very bad for them. And obviously it's going to alienate a lot of voters. It's going to alienate the Red Wall. They obviously think it's going to win some votes in the southwest. But I think it's a gamble and a terrible idea overall. And he's the heir to Blair, remember. I mean, Carl Benjamin's always saying that the Tories are trapped in the Blairite paradigm. And Cameron, there was a documentary called The Toff at the Top by Peter Hitchens. He started off trying to be conservative. Then he gave up on that because he didn't do very well and just became fully a new Labour type. I think it's a disaster for anyone who actually wants a Conservative Party.
He actually he gave what was considered at the time to be a sort of very generous and noble and sort of decent diplomatic speech, didn't he, acknowledging New Labour's achievements when he came in. I remember the famous phrase was, he bequeaths us a country more at ease with itself than the one that he found. And everyone thought, oh, that's decent, generous, sort of, what, you know, gentlemanly sort of. But it turned out he was actually rather more in hock to Blairite.
Yeah, it was a social liberal, and he had things like the A-list, where it was all obsessed with diversity in the cabinet and so on.
Packing quangos.
Yeah, and
packing them, yeah.
And then people are saying, why not get someone from your own team? Why go back to Cameron? You know, there's the age and experience, maybe, but is it good experience? Although I will say one thing, it is good for our colleague in the jungle, Nigel, as long as he doesn't eat anything too bad. Because you see, the Tories will implode. Nigel comes in. Farage 2029 wins, becomes Prime Minister.
That is obviously, I think it'd be very unlikely that they'll lose the next election. That the Tories will win. And it's probably between Badenoch and Farage for people of a sort of proper dry right sensibility now, isn't it? I can't see Suella as Prime Minister. I don't want to diss her on her bad day. I think she did speak for a large part of the population, and she spoke some pretty harsh truths, albeit possibly in intemperate language. But I don't think she has the full skill set. Yeah.
We were speaking about this on Friday, that insiders were saying that she was deliberately trying to be inflammatory in her language in order to get sacked in which to launch a leadership campaign.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true.
No, well, I think that's probably two-dimensional chess, isn't it? Which is more than adequate for most people's intellect, mine included. What's the Telegraph got, Nick? Is it anything different?
Well, of course, they've got the Cameron story, but they've also got Rwanda plan must go ahead, even if it means leaving ECHR. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is saying, we will leave, no ifs, no buts. He says, I've been clear that we have to do whatever it takes. There was this idea, has Suella gone now because they think they're going to lose the case and then everything will blow up, it'll be massive drama. So she's gone. Maybe they think they're going to lose it, and therefore they will have to leave the ECHR. And it comes down to, does Sunak have the will to do it? And now perhaps it also comes down to the influence of James Cleverly and Cameron. And Cameron's been a bit anti-ECHR in the past, but Cleverly has publicly opposed leaving, and now he's new in the Home Office.
So that looks very unlikely now, doesn't it? But on the other hand, it would be humiliation if they don't, because Sunak could put his name to that Rwanda plan. That wasn't just a Suella kind of brain spurt, was it?
No, they have to do it. And also, we're doing a story later about immigration in Europe. All of Europe's becoming much tougher on immigration, so we're going to look very soft and incompetent if we can't.
You're right, that's coming up very shortly. Let's see if we can get through the Guardian. Bruce, has that got anything different?
Yes, this is to do with patients trapped inside Israel forces reach gates of Gaza.
I thought you were going to say trapped inside the body of a woman. I thought we were going early on trans this evening.
No,
Sorry,
for once,
I shouldn't be laughing.
No. So basically, this is to do with Hamas commandeering hospitals.
Right.
And although that's against international law, it means that they are no longer hospitals, and then they can
legitimate military targets.
Yes, and also the hospitals have underground tunnels and stuff where they found hostages. And
I am no expert, and I don't mean this facetiously, because it is obviously horrific watching Gaza being laid waste. No matter what you think about, the degree to which Hamas called it in. But Gaza does seem to have an extraordinarily large number of hospitals, doesn't it? I mean, I've seen maps where virtually every third building seems to be a hospital, and you do begin to become slightly sceptical about it. I mean, we've got one in Brighton, and the nearest one after that is Haywards Heath, and then you have to get to Guildford.
I suppose a cynic might say they have more need of them given their location.
Yeah, I suppose
That's
they're not the normal. I mean, most NHS hospitals are mainly full of very old people, aren't they? But Gaza hospitals have probably got a different set of priorities. I don't know. Anyway, I am being facetious, and it isn't a laughing matter. But yes, it's an impossible situation. Hamas very deliberately and unconscionably put all their secret tunnels and their weapons and launch all their rockets from the single most, disturbing and distressing possible target, right?
Yeah, and they've caused this with their October 7th attack. But the problem is the PR battle for Israel. The more these things happen, the more the Guardian will run stories about, babies dying and stuff. And so it's going to be very tough.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And you get people like George Galloway, trying to cast doubt on the entire reality of the incursion. Absolutely. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he makes an appearance in the next Parliament. Finally, the Daily Star.
Rise of the slapheads is what they've gone with, and it's a welcome break from the other tough news. It's 88% of women love chrome domes, and it's that they find bald men sexy. But the only problem in the Star is that's the latest data from boffins. Star always talks about boffins, and most of them, it's saying, are probably bald themselves. So they're suggesting a conflict of interest.
Do you think the Star is actually basically a propaganda channel for big boffin?
It's a good point.
It does.
But they always seem to be anti-boffins.
They
talk about them a lot.
They talk about boffins. If we didn't have the Daily Sun, we wouldn't hear about boffins at all. It's really, do you know what I mean? I think it might actually be
eggheads and boffins would barely feature in public life if it wasn't for the Daily Star.
Very clever little double. That's three-dimensional chess, you see, Bruce.
Right,
The boffins being a little bit cleverer. Those are the front pages. Coming up after the break, Schengen needs mending. The flower of Scotland is hate speech, and the police just can't keep up. Join the club. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Bruce, we'll kick off with the Daily Mail. Europe says Schengen Schmengen, bring back borders.
Well, you did interrupt me with the transitioning of a story there, and I think that Suella could be transitioning into a new job with Schengen here.
Oh, OK.
Because this is the Mail, this is the shattering of Schengen, and the map that reveals how 11 countries, from France to Slovakia, Sweden to Germany, are rebelling against EU free movement in the face of terrorism and out-of-control immigration.
Yeah.
Day by day, the face of Europe is dramatically changing as terrorist threats and out-of-control immigration destroy the EU's ideal of passport-free travel between its member states.
So the idea of Schengen, which we're all familiar with, this is when you're able to just drive from Switzerland, or not Switzerland, I don't know, that's part of it, but let's say, Luxembourg into France, whatever, and you don't even notice you've moved between countries. This seems to be something that they can withdraw at will, because I was under the impression that was a universal charter, that was something they'd all committed to. Well, it rather undermines it, doesn't it?
So what they've done here is there are 11 nations in the Schengen area, from France again to Slovakia, have reinstated long-abandoned border restrictions, including identity vetting, passport checks, police interviews, static checkpoints and vehicle inspections.
Yeah.
What do you think?
But it's kind of like you said, Simon, because it says taking the train from Austria into Germany feels like Schengen never existed. So it's just kind of a feel, it's a vibe, they've got rid of it. But, you know, this is where Europe's going. Like I said earlier, they're going top on immigration. And, of course, with proportional representation, they can suddenly bring in fairly right-wing parties in a way we can't, and we're still worried about Suella's latest
Absolutely. We could actually end up, like, becoming the less able of any country. We're having created Brexit because we were, frankly, terrified that the freedom of movement would allow all kinds of unpleasant things to make their way across the borders.
Right.
In reality, they can reinstitute their borders and we seem helpless.
Yeah, it's madness, and that's what's going to happen. It looks like even quite countries we think of as quite lefty, like Denmark, are getting very tough on it. Sweden are getting tough. France are getting tough, and it's partly the post-COVID world. It's the Russia war. People can't rely on Russia. And then we can't really rely on China in the same way. So we're moving into a more kind of isolationist. Supply chains won't be the same thing. And obviously the threat of just mass immigration.
It's funny how we anticipated that immediately after COVID, that we all thought globalisation was over because of supply chains carrying viruses with them. But actually, I think the human threat, I think the societal, the demographic. And it's funny you mentioned Denmark as a particular example, because I know that they are very proud, rightly so, of their heroic, protection that they offered to the Jews during the Second World War. They were particularly valiant and self-sacrificial in defying the Nazis. And several Jewish statues and monuments and so on have been defiled recently in the sort of Europe-wide. This is all really hotting up, and it's not, we've obviously been mainly focused on our own Remembrance Day clashes and so on, but there's other stuff happening on the continent now.
Yeah, and I just think it's amusing that how worried we all are about Suella Braverman when Germany's chancellor is saying things like, we must finally deport on a grand scale those who have no right to stay in Germany. It's far more tough than anything Suella's saying.
It'll be interesting to see whether Suella actually takes the opportunity. I've been thinking about this, to do a few lecture tours. I suspect she'd be quite popular in a number of European and possibly America as well, actually.
A transfer to Europe. Yeah. It's a classic.
Get through the window. Nick, Telegraph now. The French have spent all their border protection money on magic beans, it seems.
Yeah, cash sent to France to stop migrant crossings spent on microwaves and phone chargers. Microwaves? I thought they were good at food. What are they making? So I was bothered by that. And France has failed to stop more than half of all migrants trying to make illegal crossings. We've given them 44 million. It's gone on microwaves. Some of it seems reasonable, like it's gone on sort of riding boots and helmets and stabling for horses when they're out there, on the horses between Calais and Dieppe, whatever, however you pronounce it. And that's more reasonable, but they've also bought printers, and there is a line when it's like microwaves for the police. You go, microwaves, really? Do we have to pay for that? So yeah, it's all dodgy. I mean, water cannon would be cheaper. You can't say that.
I don't mind if they want to equip like an office on the quai de la France or whatever, with a microwave and a kettle and whatever it needs, the home comforts, as long as they do the job. But the trouble is they're not doing the job, are they? I mean, there's been all these kind of, documentaries made and footage has been released, and I know our man, Mr. Farage, has been on top of all of this. this, and it's quite obvious that they have no intention at all of putting themselves out.
They're out there stuffing themselves with ready meals instead of stopping migrants.
We need to create some sort of watery barrier. Obviously, we can't go for the full gunship measures just yet, but you know these things that kind of harness wave power?
Like a wave machine.
Yeah, but we do it the other way round, to create waves instead of harnessing waves. We just make it too wavy coming out of
Good
the air.
idea.
Do you know what I mean?
The whole thing could be like a very nasty water park.
Just get like a speedboat going back and forth really fast all the time, creating a lot of wake.
Yeah, that'd be way cheaper than 44 million.
It would. Actually,
one speedboat, working day and night.
You could have a dozen speedboats, a dozen in Calais, just wherever they need to be, and they could be dropped as well by.
It's quite a fun job as well, driving
helicopter.
But going back to the office, if they are eating microwave meals and stuff, there won't be any crumbs because a lot of this money has gone on vacuum cleaners.
That's true.
So,
as well. Yes,
good point.
I don't know whether the French are bothered by crumbs particularly.
They won't be bothered by vermin.
Bruce, The Guardian have an unexpected upside to anti-terrorist legislation.
Yeah, I read this and reread it, and I really didn't understand it. So it's a plan to tighten the law on glorifying terrorism. And the immediate thing is please don't mention his name. Could criminalise the crowd at Murrayfield, right? Now, Downing Street's plan to ban the glorifying of terrorism risks criminalising supporters of the suffragettes, Nelson Mandela, or even the crowd at Murrayfield.
We know why.
Belting out Flower of Scotland.
Because all Scottish traditional anthems contain hate speech. They all defy the British, and they express their determination to use any means, foul or fair.
I only know the ones in Gaelic.
But I suspect Flower of Scotland probably has something about planting bombs under the stone of Scone or something.
Do you? It's pronounced Scone. We'll move on from that. So, yeah, this was a range of proposals that had been floated by Number 10 in wake of the Armistice Day protests.
OK.
So I'm wondering then, really, could Flower of Scotland, well, I suppose, but are they not just trying to do something that they didn't do with what they should have done something about, if you see what I mean?
Well, I don't know.
Am I wrong?
It seems to me that they're probably introducing a blunt instrument and hoping that the police force can use the spirit of the thing.
Well, the examples they use don't work with me because the suffragettes were terrorists, Nelson Mandela, violent communist, and Flower of Scotland, as you say, hate speech. So they don't work. But also, why can't they use existing laws? Well, they suddenly can if it's lockdowns or the EDL march that was banned. So to me, it's more they're trying to find a law that works perfectly. The other thing here is they're saying, well, if we need to change these laws to deal with this new type of violent pro-Hamas thing or whatever. But what the real difficulty is, it's kind of the failure of liberalism because we have no way to differentiate. We should be differentiating between people who are obviously enemies of our country, but we can't do that with the philosophy.
Carl Schmitt. The friend-enemy distinction. That's what they need to get their head around. Unfortunately, Schmitt has unfortunate adjacencies as well.
Yes, I was waiting for your first obscure reference.
That is basically what all political questions boil down to, friend-enemy, you know. And they will try and disguise this, with as you say, by making it a rules-based society, but it isn't. It's ultimately sentiment-based.
That's it. And so we need to somehow encode that into law, which is difficult.
Yeah.
I'll have to read Schmitt.
Telegraph, you will. Wikipedia page, good start. Telegraph have the Met making a commitment to not be able to cope. That's the latest Met.
Oh, yeah, I've got it in the mail, but whichever. It's this one, isn't it? Pro-Palestinian marches every week until Christmas. Unsustainable. Police... Yes, warn Met Police Federation chairman. Anyway, shouldn't it be warned? Police warn Met Federation chairman, so they're warning him. Anyway, they're basically saying if there's going to be these marches constantly until Christmas, they can't handle it. Yeah. And that's fair enough. They're saying they can handle it occasionally. Rick Pryor, the chairman of the Met Police Federation, saying we can handle them occasionally, we've got the resources, but not for every week. And this is a new problem we've got, and they're really. I mean, it's called them pro-Palestinian marches. I would call a lot of them anti-Israel marches, and it's the same problem.
I think they are. There is genuinely a mix of people there, and I don't want to get sort of swept up in the marches of hate thing. I think probably 90% of the people there are just horrified by the footage they're seeing, whether or not they should investigate it a bit more and interrogate what they're looking at, you know. But I don't think most people are going on those marches because they hate Jews, and I do think that is a dangerous thing to peddle, that idea, because, you know, Jews are feeling anxious enough without maybe exaggerating.
It's a mixture, like you say. But this is the problem we've got now. It's how do you deal with it? Of course we're going to have a resource problem. We've got a load of people in the country who hate us. We've indoctrinated people in schools and universities to hate the country. Yeah. So now how do we deal with it? Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like an awful lot of chickens coming home to roost in one place, isn't it? What do you think, Bruce? I'm still thinking about Flower of Scotland and whether that conceived to be hate speech. No, really, I am. I'm going to Google the lyrics. I do wonder whether, you know, I wonder how many people the Met sent to football matches at the weekend. I wonder whether they have
what other roles they have. I mean, you never see the police just patrolling anything anymore, do you? So I suppose it's all just flood defences. But these marches just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Well, the Daily Mail now, Bruce. Esther McVeigh's gap year doing work experience at GB News may be coming to an end.
Yes, which I'm quite excited about because I'm going to apply for a job. I think I'd be quite good at that. So Rishi's new Minister for Common Sense, PM brings Esther McVeigh back to the Cabinet with her mission to combat wokery as he offers her an olive branch to the Tory right. Esther McVeigh is returning to Cabinet and will be leaving her job here at GB News. Now,
so do we consider her right-wing? I wasn't that sure about that.
I don't know. The one thing I will say about her, and I'm sorry it's really shallow, I always think her hair is excellent. She obviously goes to a really good hairdresser. I think it's very well cut.
Do you think that will satisfy the Tory right?
I think that will satisfy the Tory right because I don't think they enjoy a split end. However, recently, I think people are going to be surprised at this appointment because she didn't show much common sense when she was tweeting about what she saw the Just Stop Oil protesters doing to was it a painting by some Spanish dude of Cupid and Venus, and she thought it was a painting. Right, okay.
Yeah,
is that Spanish?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Is, yeah.
Well, just basic for me, thank you. We know you're clever. But she'd got that wrong and said, you know, what are they doing? They're insulting the suffragettes, but apparently the suffragettes had done a similar thing to Just Stop Oil, but in 1914. So, I mean...
She thought it had been painted by a suffragette?
No, she thought it depicted the suffragette.
Right, yeah. Of the Venus, and it was
rugby.
Yes, although actually the suffragette who had originally attacked it was the head of a fascist party. Was another wrinkle to that story that we covered on here. But yeah, good point. I mean, Esther seems a very nice person. I've only heard great things about her. So it's sad she's leaving GB. This is a necessary role, but will she be able to do anything? I mean, I wish her luck, but, you know, Suella hasn't had much luck actually doing anything. It's because you're against the blob, aren't you? And it's a sort of anti-woke role, so it's not clear to me what the actual role is. But what's clearly happening is it's a bit of is it a sop or olive branch because Sunak's done all these, he's got rid of all the, you know, Braverman, he's brought in Cameron. Now he's saying, oh, I'm still anti-woke, though, look at this. So.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very unconvincing. That's part 2 done. Part 3 has Greta met a match. Are heat pumps an environmental hazard? A new trans appointment to help those old-fashioned women who still run on wounds. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows...
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Nick, we have a classic let them fight moment as Greta Thunberg is accused of making things political in the Times.
Yeah, it's man grabs Greta Thunberg's mic after pro-Palestinian chants at rally. I don't know if we have the video, but I've watched it, and he says, I came here for a climate demonstration, not a political view. Apparently he's a bit new to the whole climate justice scene.
What does he think it's like an aesthetic?
Yeah, just...
we do have a bit of video, apparently.
Oh, good.
Let's
have a look.
We have not been listening. The people in power have not been listening.
I come here for a climate demonstration, not a political view. Calm down.
Calm down. Calm down. Calm down.
Calm down. That's the new. How dare you?
Calm down, dear.
He had that Dutch bluntness. He's like, the way he approached was kind of weirdly like zombie, like aggressive. He just kind of came for a mic. But he was completely right. I mean, you go there, you just want to talk about all your climate nonsense, and she's banging on about Israel because it all goes together.
Palestinian flags, right?
Yeah. But it's this weird way it all goes together. You have to have the full suite of views, and it always ends up with dismantling capitalism at the end of it. And he's like, I just want to talk about the trees and the water levels and whatever it is, heat pumps. He doesn't want to talk about Israel.
No, well, you shouldn't be expected to be a part of that coalition. You're right, and yet it does seem extraordinary how many of these things. The Venn diagram is just a slightly blurry line, isn't it, at the edges?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the way that he got up on stage, look, I'm not defending anyone here, but the way he got up on stage, it was almost as though it was kind of set up, and it's a bit like, you know, you're much older than her. Why are you... Like, I thought she did well to hold her own there, because that must have been quite scary.
She did do well to hold her own, but she's 21 now or something. She's no longer a child, and also it was always intentionally infuriating when she was a child that you were supposed to listen to her, pay attention to her, respect her views, and also not criticise her because she's just a child. That was such an unmistakably foul power play by her handlers. I'm quite happy to see her bundled off stage now by an angry scrum of furious middle-aged men.
Okay, I personally wouldn't go that far, but I do remember being appalled when I saw her on a train with sandwiches and plastic things, bags of crisps and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, oh, hen.
Then there was the whole octopus.
There's good signs that she's softening and becoming quite sort of healthy and human and has a sense of humour. And she has.
What about the octopus, Simon?
She became an octopus.
The octopus was an unfortunate mistake, or possibly placed there by somebody who would know. But
which he says here that it goes
did
without.
Not resemble Goebbels. Octopus.
I'm not saying the octopus was deliberate, but she says it goes without saying, or so I thought, that I'm against the horrific attacks by Hamas. But the problem is, many on the left, it doesn't go without saying.
No.
Anymore.
Or, well, you're against them if you even believe they happen. Daily Mail now, Bruce, for more net zero malarkey and the revelation that there are such things as noise experts, which is a job I reckon I could do.
Well, yes. So this is noise experts tell the government to cool it on heat pumps after a new study suggests that they could be too loud for millions of homes. First of all, do you get them in flats? Can you have them in flats, or would you have to have them in a commune?
No, they have to go from your home down into the belly of the earth. They have to go hundreds of metres underground.
No, but they're saying there could be 5 or 6 in a terrace block, and that's part of the problem they're talking about.
Yeah. They hum. Is that the?
And they'd all hum together, and that would be a whole other level of noise.
For a barbershop quartet harmony.
But the thing about the humming is that they hum between 40 to... Is that the Frog song by Paul McCartney? Because it's coming up for that time of year, isn't it? 40 to 60 decibels. But what they are saying is the level of this noise is similar to that made of your average fridge, freezer or dishwasher. So is it really a problem?
So that would be all right, except it's in the back garden. I don't know.
It would be, because if I move houses, my new house, there'll be a balcony like next to my bedroom. If they've got a heat pump out there for some reason, I'm not sure why it's outside.
It's not as bad as a hedge trimmer.
I think it's going to be a nightmare in built-up places. You're out in the sticks in Brighton or whatever.
Well, we are
next
in
to the
classic
sea.
suburban garden land, and it is annoying if anyone has anything on for very long, I have to admit.
It's going to be a nightmare. They're not going to work, and they're going to be really loud and awful and expensive. It's terrible.
They are expensive, but it's a bit like the electric car thing as well. They're not necessarily as environmentally friendly as you would think, because it's something to do with what's in the battery, and they can't break down and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, they're terribly compromised, absolutely.
And they require
it all
loads of petrol.
Else. Telegraph, Nick. An endometriosis charity has hired a woman with a view, but no womb.
Yes, appointment.
Get it? Womb with a view.
Yeah, womb with a view. I dig it. I'll get it at home. I'll laugh later on the repeat. Appointment of trans woman as boss of womb charity, worrying and insulting. And this is Steph Richards, who's a kind of annoying bloke who's on Twitter a lot. And under a Labour government, that would be illegal, what I just said, but I'm not sure if I get away with it now. But this Steph person so it's Endometriosis South Coast. They've appointed this Steph Richards character, and Steph Richards in the past has said that puberty blockers are not dangerous for children and are reversible, which is obviously complete nonsense, a dangerous lie, and has also said, by the way, that man, woman, and, wait for it, child are social constructs. Now, when someone starts telling me a child is a social construct, I say red flag, back away, danger, danger. So, yeah, very questionable person, I would say, to be doing this job. And obviously an insult to women is the obvious
and
point.
Also,
massive insult
point,
to women.
but he, she, whatever, is 70 years of age. It doesn't feel like that's like an appointment with much of a future, like this is, do you know what I mean? It feels like it's the sort of age at which you make somebody the patron of something, possibly, but, not, I mean, do you know what I mean?
Maybe they've taken a leaf out of Biden's book, then.
Yeah, I guess that's so. I don't know. It feels to me like this deliberately provocative. You wonder sometimes, don't you, whether these charities just want to get a little bit of extra column inches, which they will now create in the Daily Telegraph or whatever, because people will be angry with them, but otherwise they'd just be ignored. Do you think it's cynical?
Well, Simon, it is Transgender Awareness Week, as Sadiq Khan has said today, so I think it is apt that we're making this story, making more people aware of the story. But we'll know, even in the article, that the Telegraph struggle, they change between she and they pronouns. If you notice this pronoun, no one can actually do it.
No, you can't stick to it at all. Well, I totally agree with you about saying children are a social construct. Gender is one thing, but age...
Mad.
Times now, Bruce. The key to helping working-class kids succeed in school is teaching them about pop lyrics and heroin. Sorted.
So, pupils should celebrate working-class culture, experts say. The authors suggest pupils study Billy Elliot and Trainspotting, as well as Dolly Parton and Charles Dickens, to celebrate working-class culture at the same time as developing the kind of vocabulary that's taught in private schools. So there's quite a lot to unpack there, a lot going on.
So it's this new book, right, called Working Classroom. They've written, these lads, and it's like a teacher's guide, but they're saying that, you should still learn all the posh stuff, but you should celebrate the working class culture too.
Yeah, but then are you celebrating everything else, or are you just focusing on those two things?
Exactly. The question is how much time have you got, isn't it? I mean, there isn't even really a culture class, is there? Are they talking about English literature or music? I mean, where would you learn about Dolly Parton? What class would that fit into?
I see what you mean.
A gay one.
Right, yeah, she's not working class, is she, particularly?
No, she was. She came
no, she herself, but, it's not working class culture, not in this country.
I think her succession to superstardom is something to do with working class culture, because she came from an incredibly poor background, and also she's really instrumental in a reading campaign for those impoverished children in America.
Fair enough.
She puts a lot of money into that.
I don't decry her.
There's a much bigger problem here, Sam, which is that they're saying that meritocracy is smoke and mirrors, and they're saying that social mobility it sort of takes you away from your working class roots, but meritocracy worked perfectly well, especially when we had the grammar schools, which meant all kinds of people could transcend their working class background, and we got rid of that. What I'm wondering is how they're going to cope with, as it says here, white working class boys are some of the lowest achievers at school, and they're saying that, but they're using words like equity, and they're saying meritocracy doesn't work, so they sound very woke. So my question is, how are they going to tackle the taboo of white working class boys?
It's a good question. I mean, they've written a whole book. I checked it out. It's available for sale, so I suppose if anyone wants to find out, they can. It's a sort of classroom guide. Perhaps it's well-intentioned. Maybe even it does have a goo. I think it's going to be very difficult to persuade people that working-class culture is something that you can teach, because in a way, the whole point of, cultural artefacts that you can teach is that there's some complexity to them that makes them difficult without the teacher intervening and mediating. See what I mean? Whereas working-class culture is something that bubbles up naturally. It's the whole point, isn't it?
Right.
In much the same way, to be honest, the upper class guy. I mean, hunting. Nobody teaches hunting, do they? People don't teach manners, you know. Or,
probably they're eaten, but
it's just how people behave to let their hair down, isn't it? It's not the idea is that, you know, good literature is not a class divide thing. It's a thing that you have to apply your brain to in order to unpick it a little bit.
So it's almost as if once being taught, it's kind of ossified and it can't possibly be a spontaneous expression of the culture.
Yeah. Anyway, Nick,
is that what you meant?
Trust. Yes, no, I think we're broadly on the same page. National trust, not to be trusted with national holidays. This is in the Express.
Yes, Christmas and Easter excluded from National Trust's inclusion calendar. Quite ironic headline from the Express. And well, it's the Express quoting the Telegraph, weirdly. They should just do their own journalism. So they're saying, according to the Telegraph, because they're not as good a paper, the calendar reportedly features Ramada, Diwali and Eid, but not Christian festivals such as Christmas and Easter. And the absurd explanation for this from the National Trust is that they want to appeal to everyone rather than a minority. So they got rid of Christians and the majority of
I think what's happening is
people.
quite difficult. I read this story in 2 different papers. I think what's happening is this calendar is actually something that's made available to National Trust staff so that they can see other holidays that they could be celebrating, whereas Easter and Christmas are always celebrated. That's understood.
That's their argument, yeah. It's internal
so it's
guidance.
not like you can buy a nice new calendar in the National Trust shop and it's got all those fancy foreign holidays on it, but not good old Easter and Christmas. It's not like a kitchen calendar. It's like their calendar that the staff.
Yeah, is that better? I mean, they say the National Trust is for everyone, but not if you're a Christian.
3 down, 1 to go. The final section sees classroom banter, Stone Age parenting, and why turtles have given up on boys as well. It's all going swimmingly. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I've just uttered the most bizarre confession, but I'm not going to do it on air again. Bruce, Daily Star, news of banter phobia in UK schools.
All I would say is I agree with your confession. Now, teachers scared of banter in UK schools are sharing jokes with students clamped down. School teachers are worried that banter with their students being a serious problem after a bullying survey drew a fine line between what could and not be said in the classroom. Banter is a serious problem in schools, say 1 in 4 teachers. Now, they don't cite any examples of the banter,
no. So
but
we're
apparently
left
it's a
none the
problem.
wiser. We just know that it can shade. Well, everything can shade, can't it? As Aristotle said, all the path of virtue is always walked between 2 abysses.
I was going to say.
Side, you know.
But they do warn...
Banter is between the abyss of bullying on one side and banality on the other.
Well...
You're quoting Victoria Beckham in the break, but when the cameras roll, it goes to Aristotle. Just turns it on, flips the switch, different person.
84% of teachers said they've received no training on how to deal with banter, which is a word I really hate, actually, to avoid ending up like bands, cheeky banter. I mean, what is that, honestly?
But you shouldn't, you know what, you shouldn't have banter in classrooms. But the time and place for banter is in the changing room, on the football field.
Save it for the locker room.
Banter is not between somebody who has authority and somebody who doesn't.
Nah.
If a teacher is intervening because they think they're seeing bullying and the pupils go, no, it's just banter, miss, then the teacher has to try and judge from the perception of the victim. I think banter is helpful. It keeps, it stops the ice forming. But on the other hand, bullying is, it is genuinely psychological bullying.
Hard disagree, Simon. I mean,
you like bullying?
No, I like banter because we had it at school. Our teachers said things you could never say in 2023 in any context, and it was fun.
Oh, you think teachers could banter?
They should be able to banter, yeah.
Okay.
And the problem is now it's an anti-man. Of course, it's woke, but it's an anti-man. I've just thrown in woke, but it's a general anti-man environment because men banter. So I think the attack on banter is an attack on men.
Yeah, but I don't think teachers should gossip or bitch either.
Why?
Well, I mean, you're just saying it's anti-men.
No, it's anti-men. It's also just this ridiculous eggshell society we have. We should be able to banter in the classroom. It's just fun. I mean, it makes
maybe it depends what class
school
you're taking.
better.
I can't remember any teachers that were good at banter. I remember some of them were quite good at sort of rapier wit put-downs. Did
you say rapier?
Rapier, as in the thin, wibbly blade. I remember certain teachers, we had, it was often, because I joined a comprehensive school in its second year of intake. The previous 80 years or whatever had been grammar school. So most of the boys there and most of the masters were all of grammar school culture. And gradually, as the comprehensive school intake worked its way through, it became much...
You pulled it down to
it was
lowest common denominator.
Exactly. But, so you were, the kind of, the conversation, the badinage changed somewhat.
It changed from badinage to banter, probably, when the comp people came.
Rapier badinage.
Nick, it takes a village to raise a child. It seems this was once actually practiced.
Yet Stone Age babies receive better parenting, studies suggest, and they've based this on a semi-nomadic tribe. And you've nicked my job. I was going to say it takes a semi-nomadic tribe to raise a child, and that was all I had on this. So I'm in trouble. But thank you. Cheers. But
Hillary Clinton hovered over that book title.
So anyway, Cambridge University have studied the Benjele Bayaka, let's say, tribe, who are in the Democratic Republic of Congo. To me, it's a bit of an insult saying, well, wait, we'll figure out what it'd been like in the Stone Age and if we study these guys. I think they would be quite insulted because maybe they don't think of themselves as Stone Age. But it's saying that it gives us an insight into how it might have been. And it's basically that. It's saying, it was shared between 10 members.
You haven't raised children, of course, and I don't hold it against you, and I hope you'll get the opportunity sometime. But I have to say, it is hard work, and I really genuinely do feel this is exactly why. The nuclear family model, the idea that you have just like a mother and a father locked in a house, desperately trying to cope with a screaming 6-month-old entity is so dysfunctional compared to the, just get it out in the middle of the village and let everyone have a go.
How do you know I haven't raised children in that context? It says it takes 10 members of the group. Maybe I've just been raising various children as part of a group.
I'm thinking now is that communes and thruples are based on this thing.
Yeah.
That's
polycules.
What I'm thinking. Polycules. There we go.
They think they're progressive. They're actually Stone Age.
And then all the women have to go to the hut at the end of the garden.
Yeah.
Why do they need the toilet?
When they're in sanitary. We're bringing it all back. Bruce, we got Alex Jones
Classic
now.
evidence.
Alex Jones was right. They're turning the turtles. I think this was one of Alex Jones's, wasn't it?
Turning the
Times?
frickin'
What,
frogs
Alex
gay.
Jones from the One Show?
No, Alex Jones from the
He
Infowars.
famously said turning the frogs gay. That's what he's on about.
There's things in the water supply these days.
Endocrine.
Homophobia is off the scale.
I'm sorry.
It's too much.
I'll write an
sorry
email
for you.
about Simon.
Climate change makes green turtles increasingly female. The warmer sand in which green turtles bury their eggs means that it's more likely that the egg is to hatch female. So,
wow. I wonder if that's a thing that human mothers can do as well.
well,
Electric
my
blanket.
sister-in-law has to have that. Well, she loves an electric blanket, and she has the heating on constantly.
And she had 3 girls?
No, she had a boy and a girl, but the
Okay.
girl was the first one, so maybe that was she's the more
Probably,
dominant. I don't know.
Maybe it's only the soft-shelled egg species that this works for.
I don't know, but apparently that's what's happening.
Oh, we love the turtles. We don't want to see them die.
Yeah, well,
do we?
the males are now down to 1. It's 100 to 1 female to male. Imagine being the one. I mean, people used to say, oh, they're going to university because there's more women at that one. Imagine there's 100 females to 1.
Nottingham,
that one turtle is smashing it. I mean, they're going to go extinct, but he'll have a great time.
But that's the thing.
But that's the thing. You do. It's the best way round if it's going to happen, because you do only need 1 turtle to fertilise 100 females, right? The bull
I've always said that.
The bull to cow ratio on the farm, isn't it? It's roughly 1 to 100.
Do you breed turtles?
Yeah. Good news now, Nick, in The Guardian, for those of us who want to change our hair, our clothes, our face. Artificial faces more realistic than real ones.
Ah, that was a Bruce Springsteen reference. I got it.
Well
yeah,
done.
we're on the same page again. White faces generated by AI are more convincing than photos, finds study. So they showed a load of AIs people, and it was 66% of AI images were rated as human compared to 51% of real images. So they actually got it wrong.
Have you seen these images, though? You know the ones, I mean, you go to, like, thisfacedoesn'texist.com. There's loads of websites like that. They create, I checked them out, and I've looked at them before. They are just obviously so realistic, it's ridiculous. They're not like, you know, you see AI images sometimes, like fantasy art or whatever, it's obviously created. It can be, interesting or whatever. But no, these are so believable. It's extraordinary.
Well, that's why. Yeah, they thought they were real when they weren't. Even more so than real faces, but not for people of colour, where it was 51% for both, and it didn't matter which face the participant was. So for some reason, white people can be faked.
Yeah.
More convincingly.
I wonder if... I do sometimes think this in my self-loathing phases, that white skin shows blemishes more, possibly, when it's in photography, that sort of thing. And I wonder whether AI eliminates those blemishes because it likes to be kind, and so you end up looking sort of slightly made up for the picture, whereas if you're not...
I can't picture you having a self-loathing face.
Yeah, I've got a blemish on my face these days. Go on, Bruce.
I was just what you say, is that not the same as airbrushing?
Yeah, slightly, yeah. But have a look at them if you haven't seen them. They are extraordinary. Thisfacedoesnotexist.com. Finally, Bruce, an app in the mail that is sure to settle household disputes once and for all.
Yes, it's a chore calculator, and this will help you find out who's really pulling their weight in your household or relationship. Most couples argue over who's completed the biggest amount of chores, but a new calculator aims to help partners finally settle the debate. Do you want my advice? Get a cleaner.
Yes, a cleaner is a good investment, and also, of course, a good way of, distributing wealth to the needy. And also, actually, if you pick a good one, it can become one of your more meaningful and satisfying relationships, I think. It's been a way that we actually started to sort of connect with the community a bit when we moved to Brighton.
Through what?
Through having cleaners, The 2 or 3 cleaners that my wife is pretty genuinely very good at just kind of being nice to them and finding out if they've got kids and would like a jumper that Edward no longer uses and that sort of stuff.
Have we actually said what the app's called? It's called Share the Load. Did you say that? I don't know if we're allowed to.
I didn't, and I think
the
you know
obvious
why
way to do it, anyway, I will tell you the obvious. It's exactly the way that you get with kids and cake. One cuts, one chooses. So one person divides up all the chores that need doing that week, and then into 2 halves, and then the other one gets to choose which half they want to do.
Men shouldn't do housework. Assuming they're winning all the bread, doing all the work.
Absolutely. So that's a big assumption. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. Daily Mail, Rish's big throw of the dice. Telegraph, Cameron's return sparks Brexiteer clash. Guardian, Cameron's shock return in high-stakes reshuffle. Times, Sunak brings Cameron back from the wilderness. iNews, Back to the Future, PM gambles on return of David Cameron. And finally, the Daily Star, Rise of the Slapheads. That's the latest propaganda release from Big Boffin. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Bruce Devlin and Nick Dixon. I am back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Leo Kearse and Josh Howie. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. If that's it, it's the end of the day. You've got 5 hours off now before GB News resumes broadcasting. I hope you enjoyed a good night's sleep. Good night.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel.